Hi all, welcome to our first workshop for the GoOjai Maricopa Highway demonstration project. I'm joined here by Dana Wall, our project manager, and Greg Grant from the City of Ojai, and the city's transportation consultant, Paul Crabtree, is also here with us. We're going to go through a brief presentation and just explain the project. We'll turn off our video and walk you through the basics of the project. And then there will be an opportunity for question and answer at the end of the presentation, and we'll explain to you how exactly we're going to moderate that discussion. So here goes. So tonight, what we're going to talk about is what the quick build process is. What is quick build? What does that term mean? We'll go over an overview of this specific project and how we accomplish quick build projects in general, and give you updates as to where we are in the process and next steps. And then we can have that virtual Q&A. For the purpose of clarity, we just ask that everyone remain on mute, which everybody has done so far. And if you do have a question, just feel free to use that, that Q&A option at the bottom of the screen and type in your question, or if you prefer to just ask it verbally, raise your hand and we'll note that you have something to say. And at the end of the presentation, we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question. Be aware that the session is being recorded, so that if you don't feel comfortable with that, just email us or type in your question and we will answer you offline. So our team is made up of a group of professionals, experts in their fields that will help us accomplish this project. We are Street Plans, and I'll tell you a little bit more about us in a second. We're joined here on the line is Jane Olvera from JP Marketing. They are in the top of their field in terms of marketing and communications, and they're helping us craft our communication strategy. They put together our social media strategy and also our logo and our website. We also have on the team Tool Design Group. They are an engineering firm that specializes in active transportation, and they will be heading up our data collection effort. And then we've also got Prism Creative Group. It's a firm that specializes in event production for the types of events that we envision for this project, a celebratory event, but they also do different types of marketing and outreach methods. And then we're also working with a technology firm called Numina, and they offer an information technology platform that captures real-time data about transportation projects. And so we're excited to be working with them on this project. And so we are Street Plans. We are a transportation planning firm. My background, I'm an architect by training, and the first part of our careers, we worked on everything from form-based codes and new urbanist plans to bicycle master plans and transportation plans of all types. And we realized very quickly that part of the work that we were doing was just creating plans that just sat on a shelf. And that really bothered us. And so we developed a methodology that we call tactical urbanism, or the quick build methodology, that we'll discuss more in a second. And that's all about getting action out into the world. So getting those plans off of the paper and into the real world so that people can test and see what those projects are like, and to accelerate the implementation of these types of projects. We also do a fair amount of public outreach as part of this. We consider that all a public outreach strategy. And we do workshops and trainings all around the world and write best practices guides. To date, we've written over a dozen guides on subjects as varied as public markets and open streets events, transit and asphalt art projects, and a variety of tactical urbanism guides that you can see here that document how this methodology is used really all around the world. And we're working currently on a guide for an update to our materials guide. All of this you can see online at tacticalurbanismguide.com. And it's all open source and is really easy for folks to access and understand and apply in their communities. And so in terms of our experience, as I said, we work on bicycle plans and pedestrian plans all around the country, but we also do these types of demonstration projects in service of those plans. And so here are just a few of some examples of projects that we've done recently that are very similar to this project or have components that are similar. Bike lane projects, intersection repair projects, and intersection repair means projects that somehow change the curb radius or introduce an art element into the street, and then there are street murals there. So we are experienced in this. We are leaders in our field. We created the field of tactical urbanism and are the lead practitioners of it internationally. And most of the time in our work, we're actually going into communities of various sizes and trying to recalibrate and reconfigure our streets so that there's more space for bicyclists and pedestrians into something like this. So this is an example from St. Louis where we took a 4-lane road, not dissimilar from what we're working with here, and this is called a 4-to-3 conversion or a road diet, where you give over 1 full lane of traffic to bicyclists on either side of the road. And so this shows a very temporary approach to that conversion to try to test out the idea. And oftentimes when we show these types of renderings, we're confronted with either angry residents or engineers, city engineers, or even municipal officials, city managers or mayors or elected officials who don't understand why this future version is better than this current version. And so for the first part of our work, and I think for many of our fellow practitioners' careers as well, we were left with just these renderings to try to explain the concept. And so that's why I think from our point of view, we really tried to spearhead this methodology and started to practice it, because it was easier to show people what the result of this drawing would be in real life rather than to just talk about a plan. And so one of the great examples of that methodology in action, as it relates to the context that we've got in Ojai, is a project that we did in Burlington, Vermont. And while Burlington is a big city for Vermont, it's a very small city relative to other big cities, and not dissimilar from Ojai in many ways. It's a almost rural at times community, and has a lot of quiet residential greenway streets, and much wider than what they needed to begin with. And admittedly, this is a more developed area, but very consistent with the levels of traffic that Ojai has. And we were tasked with creating a master plan for the city that envisioned a network of connected bikeways, either separated bikeways like what you see here on the left or on the right, or neighborhood greenways, which are just very low volume streets where you could ride in the street and bicyclists are given priority. So as part of the outreach effort, we did a 1-day test as part of the master plan, where this is all temporary paint and planters, and we just threw them up there. And that was really our way of working with elected officials and with residents who were otherwise unsure about what that change would mean in their daily commutes. And that 1-day test led to the successful adoption of the master plan, which envisioned a wide-ranging facilities around the city, and the adoption of an entire quick build policy and set of standards, to the point where now the city has accelerated the implementation of this infrastructure in a way that they would not have otherwise. And what we like to say is, if the city had tried to just do a master plan and just implement it without having gone through the demonstration project phase, we would probably still be talking about the master plan and about implementing the master plan rather than the power of this methodology in action. And that's the power of the quick build tactical urbanism methodology. And this example is so much more topical now because Burlington happens to be one of the cities, one of a handful of cities actually in the United States that is has been able to use this policy as a way of addressing the COVID-19 crisis, because they had a policy in place and a set of standards that allowed them to selectively close their streets and rapidly deploy infrastructure in a way that would address physical distancing for residents and allow for physical distancing in the streets while still maintaining their transportation network. So we find right now, this is an active conversation that we're having with cities all around the country, that cities are struggling because they don't know how to do that sort of rapid deployment, and Burlington is doing it on a scale that few other cities really in the world are doing. And so that's a result of this one-day demonstration project. And so Quick Build is an approach to neighborhood building that uses short-term, low-cost methods that can instigate or lead to more permanent changes. And we like to show this image because it's based on a design theory called design thinking, which is all about creating tests, seeing if they work, seeing how they work, and fixing what doesn't work before making any heavy-duty investments. And now we think about all the things that we have in our lives, devices, cars, anything, our computers, the mice that run the computers, all the sort of devices that we have, electronic devices and whatnot. And all of these things have gone through prototyping and testing. And we do that for these things that we spend $50 on or $100 on, but we don't do it on our streets, in our city infrastructure that we spend tens of millions of dollars on, only to find out after it's done that it simply doesn't work the way that we thought it was. And so we like to tell our clients and residents, let's go into projects with humility, knowing that we don't know all the answers and that perhaps this demonstration will show things that we didn't see or that were not readily apparent when we did our designs in the first place. We are not, omniscient, and we don't know all the answers. Doing the test, doing the demonstration allows us to see what the result is in real life and to adjust based on what that real life condition is with a very small investment of time and money up front before you make $1 million or several $1 million investment in infrastructure. And so when we talk about quick build projects, we really are talking about breaking down project delivery into smaller increments. Normally, when projects are planned and implemented, they go from design to permanent over the course of 3 to 5 years. And anybody who's been involved with this project knows that story very well. From the time that the council first approves of the idea until it's actually implemented is a half of a decade. And from my point of view, and I think from many people's point of view who practice quick build process, we don't want to wait that long to see if this infrastructure works and to actually get it in the ground, to accelerate the implementation of that infrastructure. So, when we talk about quick build projects, there's a range of project types. You can start with a one-day project. That's a very quick test where volunteers are involved, where the materials are gone after a day. There's a pilot phase, and now our project is called the demonstration project, but it's actually a pilot phase because it's intended to be in the ground for 6 months. The types of materials, the level of investment of our time and resources is more than for a one-day event. And then there's interim design. This is a step right before permanent design, right before you change curbing gutters and really tear up the street. And at every step of the way, you're learning something about the project, you're involving people in a different way, the level of investment is increasing at every step, and durability all the way to your permanent design, rather than jumping right to permanent. And when we think about these types of projects, they can come from anywhere. So that example from Burlington, that could have come from a neighborhood group or a concerned citizen who wanted to close down their street for the day. We see that a lot in our projects. But we also see examples like, well, that example in particular was led by the city with us as consultants. So there are top-down examples, bottom-up, and then there's this whole middle area of design firms and developers, business improvement districts and chambers of commerce that all partake in this methodology as well. And they act as the go-between between the citizens and the elected officials and municipal government. So why do we use this quick build process? For me, as a youngish person, and I've been giving this presentation and talking about this for 10 years already, since I was in my late 20s. So at this point, I've said this so many times, I can't stress it enough. I don't want to wait until I'm 50 or more to see infrastructure in my community. I started out as an advocate in my community, advocating for better infrastructure. And then I backed into transportation planning. So I want to expedite delivery of public benefits. We need these benefits now. We shouldn't wait 5 to 10 years or 20 or more. The temporary and iterative nature of the projects allows for evaluation and making adjustments. And I think that's something that municipal governments struggle with often, is making adjustments to these projects. And it's something that we push our clients to really think about these projects as a way of testing, prototyping a project before getting the final in the ground. So it's a way of testing out what will work and what doesn't work, and fine-tuning things like curb radii or lane widths or other relevant details of a project. I think very important for me is that these projects are based on master plans. They're action focused. They involve people in the creation of the infrastructure that they use. And different than your normal type of planning process, this, although this is a passive forum right now where you're just watching a presentation, this is not a passive type of project, and it's not a passive type of public engagement process. And it's one where our expectation is that the folks on this webinar and moving forward in our community action committee help implement the project. And that's true if you are an avid bicyclist or a supporter of the project, or if you're not a supporter of the project. Oftentimes we find the folks who are not supportive of the projects that we're involved with at the outset learn something about the project or walk away from the project with something at the end. Even if they don't come away fully supportive of the project, they learn something. And I think that's important for us in this project. And part of the reason is because you go out there and you do something. And there's a noted researcher, Edgar Dale, who's he was an expert in education and in how we learn. And he said, we remember, very little of what we write or what we hear or what we say, but we remember so much more of what we do. And those lasting impressions are what lead to people in the community either renewing their support for a project or coming to the city and saying, you should really think about how this is going to work, and really thinking about how something's going to change. And so that pride of ownership is something that we want to engender with the quick build type project. And so a little bit about the details of this project. This is a project that is funded by the Southern California Council of Government, and it's in anticipation of a longer-term reconstruction of Maricopa Highway. It is approximately 4,000 lineal feet of buffered and separated bikeways. They are either separated by parking or by planters or by plastic delineators, and we're going to show you what those all look like in a moment. And then there are also intersection improvements at Church, Pyrie, Valerio, that involve curb extensions that are interventions in the intersection that reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians. And then there's also some thought that's gone into Nordhoff High School and how the drop-off and pickup patterns work with their driveways. And so it's all tied together here. Our original timeline was to implement the project before school let out. With the whole COVID quarantine and school being canceled, we've had to rethink our timeline. And unfortunately, we're not gonna, unless they open school in May, which I highly doubt, though we are going to be prepared for that, we are not going to be able to capture before data for that month of school. So we're going to install in the summer and then have the installation on during the fall school year. And then any lessons learned from that demonstration will be applied to the final design, which is already in permitting right now with Caltrans, and which should be approved by October of this year. So now I'm going to hand it off to Dana Wall so that she can walk us through some of the basics about how we do these projects, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. Dana?
Okay. Hello, everybody. All right, so we typically break down these projects into 4 phases. So including this project, I'm just going to go through the basics of that. So we kicked off the project in March, early March, and since that time we have been executing data collection and analysis of existing conditions along the corridor. So that's anywhere, anything from bicycle and pedestrian counts, traffic volumes, existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities, gaps in connectivity, land use, really anything to kind of help inform what's going on the ground, and also set up metrics for what we will be evaluating during the 6-month demonstration period. We have started to initiate our community advisory committee and technical advisory committee formation. We'll talk a little bit more about those entities at the end of the presentation, and give you a little bit more information on how you could potentially get involved. We've worked with JP Marketing to create the project brand. There's a web page that lives on the city website. We've also been sharing that link as much as possible, which is included in this presentation. And we just created a social media account as well on Instagram. So the goal with that is to create as many outlets as we possibly can to inform the community of the project, of relevant updates, and just offer opportunity for questions and that sort of thing. So we'll be operating some different platforms here. And then finally, we began the site plan production pretty much immediately, as soon as we can. And so that brings us into the current phase, number 2 here, design development. So we are working to finalize and refine the site plans, as well as the kickoff event plan, which, finalizing the site plan and getting sort of approval from Caltrans will also help us finalize and kind of firm up our budget, since we will be knowing exactly what materials and how much we'll be using. We hope to acquire the permit for the demonstration project within the next month. We also have produced an advertising and marketing and outreach plan as well. That will be for helping to promote the demonstration, implementation, and kickoff event. The CAC and TAC meetings will continue pretty much right up until the implementation of the project. And then we will also probably be having a minimum of 1 other Q&A workshop similar to this one to share updates, probably in about a month. So then we'll move into phase 3. So once we've acquired the permit and we've really firmed up the details of the implementation and of the kickoff event, we get more into the nitty-gritty details of how we'll execute the project. So we will need to find storage and staging locations for materials. So that's for the delivery of the materials, and then also for where we'll stage the materials along the corridor for implementation. And this is strategically done in accordance with our build day plans. We will execute the before data collection, and I can give you a glimpse into what that will look like. We finalize our detailed implementation timeline. So we will create a build day plan that, if we're working with volunteers, which we hope, a lot of you will want to come out and help us. We will have tasks, down to the hour, 2 hour, even, as fine-grained as 15 minutes about where everyone is supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing, and who on the ground is going to be leading the different tasks for that day. we operate it as organized as possible. And then finally, about a month to 2 weeks before the implementation, we will meet with all of the volunteers. So anyone who said that they want to volunteer in implementation, we'll bring them together for a little bit of a training on what they'll be doing and what the implementation methods will look like, which I actually will touch on the next couple of slides. For the kickoff event, Prism Creative Group will meet with the vendors on site, review the site plan, get everything ready for that. That will probably happen the evening of the final day of implementation. We're looking at probably a multi-day implementation here. And then of course we'll execute the demonstration project and the kickoff event. And then also simultaneously, we will have prepared all of our evaluation methods to have those start as well when the project is implemented, so that we're able to accurately evaluate the impact of the project. So let me get to the next slide here. Okay, so going through some implementation methods just so you all can get an idea of what this looks like. I think it's a little delayed on my end. So these are just some of the different tasks. These are just examples from other projects, not necessarily the exact context we'll be working with here, but so we always start with chalk lining and measuring. This is to measure out the lines, the striping for the bike lane. So measuring and chalk lining first, striping will then come second. And we typically do this in phases, so a team will start chalk lining and measuring, a team will stripe. Any spraying of pavement markings will also have to be done. If we have any areas of solid paint, especially the conflict zone areas with the green, there will be painting there, and also affixing the vertical delineators and any other physical delineators in the separation. We will probably be not using just epoxy adhesive. We'll probably be using something more durable, but that is one option there. And then stenciling, these images up here in the upper left and the upper right, sometimes we employ designs in the asphalt coatings. We're not envisioning any designs really, but the curb extensions and the buffer are all striped. But sometimes we use stencils to outline patterns, and we'll also be working with likely an outside vendor or something for planting the planters if those are a part of the final design. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some current updates so that we can get to the Q&A. So on the site plan, so we have been producing the site plan with guidance from our technical advisory committee. That was the TAC that I mentioned earlier. We've been meeting with them to discuss things like emergency access to the sanitary district, manholes, water valves, and then obviously talking extensively with Caltrans about the design and working with the city on that. So a note about this project, we're not using concrete and we are not messing with the existing curb lines. So we are trying to do this project within the existing striping as much as possible, while also adhering to the permanent design plans that are also in progress. So we will potentially, we will be having to cover up some of the existing striping, but it's actually very, very minimal. We've managed to create the demonstration plan, within the existing striping, and we're going to try as much as possible to not have to disrupt the existing striping at all after the project is removed, which it will be removed after 6 months. And so this is a very simplified, very, very simplified sections here, just from using the StreetMix online platform, but just to give you an idea. So, the dimensions for the bike lane and the buffer lane may, they're going to change slightly along the corridor. It's not always going to be exactly 5.5 and exactly 6, but the other measurements, we're working within the right of way here. So essentially, if you all have seen the 35% plans, we're working within kind of that outer travel lane / shoulder, and we're working right up to the dash line between that lane and then the inner travel lane. And so this project obviously is reducing one lane in each direction. Part of the bike lane buffer separation is going to be on-street parking, which will also have regular planters spaced at regular intervals. This is to simulate and demonstrate what planted trees along the corridor and the permanent version would look like. And so a couple more details about the plan. These are just high level. I have a note here at the bottom. The plans will be available on the project webpage as long as, along with other project documents. We're going to be, posting as much as we can to keep everybody updated. So high level elements and components of the plan, like we said, both separated and buffered bike lanes, includes one lane reduction each way. The separation includes both striped buffers with vertical delineators and on-street parking with planters. So we have kind of two types of barriers there. And the curb extensions at all the intersections. So like Tony said, this is to shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians. It's also to slow turning movements. Also just a note, the bike lanes and the buffers and that sort of thing, they're also good to slow travel speeds. So essentially, this project is not just creating dedicated bicycle infrastructure, it is creating a safer corridor for bikes, pedestrians, and cars. So that's the goal. And then, like Tony said, we're also going to be testing out or demonstrating treatments at church to address the drop-off and pickup and try to alleviate some congestion there at peak hours. So our data collection, so we're going to be using a vendor called Numina, like Tony mentioned, and these are sensors that will be adhered along the corridor at multiple intersections, and we're going to be using these to collect before data. They will capture bicycle and pedestrian and vehicle counts. So we'll be putting these up well before the demonstration project starts, so we can get kind of that before snapshot as much as we can, and use that, to compare apples to apples after the project and during it as well. Okay, a little bit about the kickoff event. We have Prism Creative Group. They are working on, still building a list of local vendors, artists, and musicians to participate in the celebratory event. They're working on developing a concept, so there's going to be food, there's going to be local music, there will be, artisans, games, that sort of thing, and we've connected them with the school, and they're kind of off and running on planning that event, and there will be much more on that soon. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Tony. He's just going to finish up the presentation here with a little bit on our CAC and next steps, and then we will start taking questions.
Thank you, Dana. In terms of our public outreach, we are forming or have formed a community advisory committee that meets monthly before the implementation and then weekly during the month of the implementation. And the community advisory committee is really it's an open forum for anyone who wants to be involved with the project and help with its implementation. It's really a hands-on moment for anyone who wants to be a part of the project. And so the expectation for folks that are involved with the CAC are that you are involved with the day-to-day implementation of elements of the project, and that could mean any number of things as we get closer to the implementation. And so we encourage everybody to apply for that, and just let us know. We'll give you our information in a moment for that. It is open to the public, to the general public. Anybody who wants to be involved with that can be involved. We will be having what we're calling office hours for the next 3 days, tomorrow, Friday, and Monday at different times of day, so that if folks have additional questions, they can reach us and we can have a conversation. And then we will also have another workshop and additional QA sessions before the implementation. And then we'll also have Instagram and Facebook and website updates during the project. So there are numerous ways for everyone to be involved and to get information on the project. And And as I said, if you want to join the CAC or be involved in some way, but don't necessarily want to make the time commitment of the CAC, email one of us or both of us. There are email addresses. So our next steps are to secure our permit for the project, and we've already made great strides with Caltrans, and so that's well on its way. We will be scheduling our second and subsequent CAC meetings within the next week, so that they're all fully advertised and advertised with plenty of time for folks to include this on their schedule. We will be installing our counters. I see a question here about data collection. Our counters will be out there doing automated counts. And then we will also proceed with our kickoff event planning. We'll figure out based on when our permit is issued and also when the quarantine is lifted, when we do our kickoff event and when we do our implementation. And we'll be doing ongoing promotion. There you see our office hours. The information for how to log into those office hours is going to be Zoom office hours, will be on the website. And all of these virtual engagement exercises will be recorded, and there will be FAQs listed on the project website. So all these questions that you're asking will be posted on the website so that others can see our answers. So going over our protocol here again, you've got your question and answer screen that you can do that, or if you want to raise your hand and speak, you can do that as well. And then here is our information. So we'll start with the previously asked questions. The first is from Dr. Herb Rogov. Forgive me if I'm getting that right. How will emergency vehicles and ambulances gain access to Ojai Valley Hospital if there is a traffic standstill and there are parked cars in the designated lane? I do realize immediately before the hospital there is no parking. You are correct. In front of the hospital and the entrances to the hospital, there is no parking, so there should be no problem with emergency vehicles or ambulances gaining access to the hospital. In addition, the traffic volumes on Ojai are so low that they really don't warrant a discussion of a traffic standstill. There might be moments where there's slight queuing, but especially at this location in front of the hospital, there is a way to enter the hospital without having to deal with sitting in traffic. The next question comes from Dennis McCarthy. Doesn't the lockdown distort the volume studies? Essentially, the whole period may be on lockdown. You're absolutely right. That's a good question. The lockdown has changed our approach to the before counts. We have very good data from 2016 that gives us before counts, but that's not going to stop us from installing the Numina devices, which will give us real-time data on traffic counts, bicycle pedestrian counts, turning movements. And so we fully expect that during the project, during the demonstration, that life will proceed back to normal or normal-ish, and our traffic volumes and our numbers will be adequate enough to conduct an analysis. The next question is again from Dr. Herb Rogov. Will you be introducing intersection confusion and overkill near the high school? This is a complex intersection where there are 7 or more different auto movements converging with pedestrian and bicycle traffic. Traffic is composed of 3 lanes southbound, 2 lanes northbound, 1 lane exiting the high school parking lot, and 1 to 2 lanes exiting Pyree, which may turn right or proceed ahead to negotiate a left turn southbound. This activity is challenged by periodic time-sensitive traffic loads, aggravated by turning movements and potential backups. There's more here to this, and we'll have to put it on the website. I think my short answer to this is actually that the plan that's being proposed is actually a clarification of the confusion of what exists right now. Right now, it's a very wide 4-lane road where the outer parking lanes oftentimes become travel lanes for people. So it turns into such a mess, and actually reducing it down to one lane in either direction with the separated bike lane and the dedicated turn lane into the high school at Church significantly clarifies that intersection and cleans up the turning movement. So that's my short answer to this question. And I think our in terms of the medical facilities, our turning movements are to the right into the medical facilities. And I think that's going to be significantly easier and clear as well. Not to mention the bicycle and pedestrian activity also is more clear now with this plan, because previously you had bicyclists on the sidewalk and pedestrians, and this plan actually provides some predictability with regard to movement and people's movement along the site. An additional question here: where are there traffic studies for automated bike ped counts, delay studies, intersection turning movements, speed and volume counts, queuing studies, time travel studies? Well, all of those studies are actually part of the Caltrans review of the design of the permanent design, and the same Caltrans group that we've been working with to review this permit is already reviewing those studies. In addition, we are also, as we've already discussed, using Numina devices to collect real-time data regarding speed and volume counts for cars, automated counts for pedestrians and bicyclists, and those are going to be ongoing throughout the entire duration of the project. So no matter when the quarantine is lifted, we are going to get usable data from that is relevant and that can be used by the project team for the regular project, the permanent project. Dennis McCarthy says, will you be testing red lights at crossings? How does the kickoff comply with the lockdown? Dennis, okay, those are two questions. We will not be testing red lights at crossings. That goes beyond the purview of this project anyway. That might be something that the permanent project might envision, and I'll let Greg Grant discuss that in a moment. And I think I answered that about the kickoff. We won't have the kickoff unless there's no more lockdown. So essentially we have to wait until the COVID restrictions have been lifted to proceed with the kickoff. Sorry about that. Ray Powers says those emails went by too fast to write them down. They're shown right here on this final slide. You should see them. They've been up there for quite a while.
Can I also, Tony, could I also add to the traffic studies? So we have been working on, tool design group. We're working, they're, one of our team members. They have been compiling all that information as part of our, data collection and existing conditions analysis. So we do have a lot of that information in a technical report that we are still preparing, but I would imagine that's also something that we can put on the site or the webpage.
Okay. We've got another question here from Kathy Smith. Kathy says, please show the maps. Can ask relevant questions regarding the emergency vehicle issues without the maps. Kathy, thanks for your question. We really intended this workshop Q&A session to be about the basic elements of the project. We can have a Q&A session with you at another time at any of the numerous other times that we've scheduled, or at a subsequent workshop that we're planning for next month to go over the details of that plan. We're still in the process of getting Caltrans approval. So for the purpose of the demonstration project anyway, we're really not ready to share with you the plans. The versions of the 35% plans for the permanent project are on the city website. Those are free for anyone to review and ask questions to the city, engineer, Greg Grant. But I think I answered the initial question about the emergency vehicle access earlier. Herb says, thanks for the clarification. You're welcome. Ray also, okay, great. There's another screen here with some questions and answers. William Warwick says, does data collection include average motor vehicle speeds before and after? We do have before speeds. We will collect after speeds with Numina, and hopefully if the quarantine is lifted with enough time, we can get before speeds well, our intention is to get 1 month of before data anyway, regardless of the quarantine or not. But hopefully the quarantine can be lifted by June. We have our data collection process in the works, and then we can get our before and after data. Kenley Newfield says, not a question, this is a comment. Church intersection is a nightmare during school drop-off and pickup. Anything we can do to improve that? Crossing there is difficult. Turning into NHS is close to impossible. Well, our hope is that the demonstration does do something to improve that intersection. I've mentioned clarifying the lanes and making sure that tightening up that intersection, I think, will help, but also clearly denoting on the pavement with dashed lines where people are supposed to turn so that folks know that they have enough space to turn into the church driveway, the opposite side of church into Nordhoff High. There's also a separate effort that Greg Grant can speak to for that driveway to try to increase it and to increase the size just a bit so that you can get more lanes. But as it is right now, there is enough room for 1 lane coming into the high school parking lot and 2 coming out. So our hope is through this project to clarify that that's the case and show that on the pavement. And then with the more permanent project, hopefully they can increase the size of the driveway entrance to make that even more clear. Because I know that folks get delayed when they turn into the high school because they don't think they have enough room to actually make that turn. Russell says, the bike lanes plus the buffer are typically 11 feet wide. Is it true that those can be commandeered during emergencies for use by first responders to get to the hospital? That's correct. As our plan right now envisions that during times when during emergencies and during times that the sewer district has to do maintenance on the sewer lines and they have to close the northbound lane, that traffic will be diverted onto the bike lane. The bike lane plus the buffer is wide enough to accommodate regular car traffic. And so during emergency moments and during moments when maintenance needs to be done on the street, that is the case.
I'll also, I'm going to jump in and also say that we have on our technical advisory committee, you know, and people that we've reached out to be in the CAC, you know, we have representatives from the community hospital, we have fire department, we have police, we have people, representatives from the sanitary district. So, you know, so far, especially from fire and police, they haven't expressed any concerns with emergency access, and we're continuing to work with sanitary district and the water district just to make sure that there won't be any issues with access for their work as well.
Okay, next question. Jeffrey Weinstein says, the demonstration project was supposed to begin in May for graduation and July 4th for fireworks. Now the demonstration project is scheduled during the summer slow season. How can the demonstration project be realistic without experiencing a single lane graduation and July 4th? Well, Jeff, I think, you know, those are 2 days out of the year. The fact that the demonstration is not going to be in effect during those 2 days, I don't think diminishes the impact of the demonstration. There's still the rest of the year that we have to contend with. And as I understand it, and in my experience as just a normal person in the world, during major events like a fireworks show where you got one location and limited parking and limited drop-off and pickup areas, you're going to have a backup whether there are 2 lanes or 10 lanes. And so I would say that's the same for graduation as it is for July 4th. You're going to have the kickoff of school, which is usually a busier time than the rest of the year because everybody wants to go see their kids off to school. I know this is a high school and it's a little different. And there might be other points of higher increased traffic, but those outliers are not really how we plan our transportation infrastructure. And I see there are a couple people who had their hands up. Just give me 1 second, let me go back here. I'm trying to get to everybody's question. William Warwick, does the project allow iterating adjustments from experience gained from initial implementation design? In other words, made some changes based on what is learned to try alternative approaches? I mean, you know, I think that the basic elements of the project are not going to be changed. This is at its core a lane reduction and a protected bike lane, but the details can certainly and should absolutely be iterated upon and learned from. And so if there are turning movements that need to be altered, or drop-off lanes that need to be extended, or you know, lane widths that need to be changed, buffer widths that need to be changed. One of the elements that we're introducing that has not actually been a part of the plan are the plastic delineators. I think that's something that we've suggested to the city is part of the demonstration and should be part of the final project. That's an iteration in itself, and we'll learn how those hold up and if they add to the project or not. So I fully expect and hope that there is some learning from the project. Jeffrey Weinstein says, the existing plan shows a single lane going west on Ojai Avenue at the Maricopa Highway intersection. Consequently, there will be a single lane for traffic from Santa Paula to Ventura, a distance of 56 miles. Explain your logic of supplying a single vehicle lane for 56 miles, yet 2 bike lanes in each direction in just 4,000 feet. Is your organization anti-car? And Jeffrey says, this is from Jeffrey, but it says Wendy Wilson. Our organization is not anti-car. In fact, we fully believe that there should be a balance of transportation options. I think given the traffic volumes and the densities of your community, you don't warrant having a 2-lane road for 4,000 feet. It seems to me as a transportation professional to be an anomaly in the way that this region was planned, and actually returning the street back to a 2-lane road is more consistent with your traffic patterns than what you have right now, which encourages speeding and really is not how the rest of the region, as you correctly pointed out in your comment.
I'll also add, I mean, we can also think about some other goals of this project. I mean, part of the existing conditions analysis was also examining connectivity of this stretch of Maricopa Highway and how well we could maybe prepare Maricopa Highway for future additions to an on-street, bicycle network or, other pedestrian improvements. So we can also think about how we're connecting to Ojai Valley Trail. I mean, as of right now, this would be the only facility of its type in the city. So I think, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but, this is also an effort to kind of commence that sort of network in the city. And so you have to start somewhere.
That's right. Thanks, Dana. Ray Powers says, I'm unclear how you're going to demonstrate the new egress and regress into the school parking lot. That might be a conversation to review over the plans, Ray. I think one of the things that we're thinking about is showing dashed lines on the road so that folks know their path into the parking lot and out of it. As we understand it and as we've observed it, people get hesitant to make that turn because they don't think they have enough room when there are 2 cars coming out of the parking lot, when you're making a left turn into the parking lot. When we provide a clear delineation of the 3 lanes that are there currently, 1 to turn right, 1 to turn left, and 1 into the parking lot, I think it will become even more clear. And that's a first step. And as I said, and actually there's a comment here from Russell who says, the turning into campus is limited by the width of the curb and apron. Adjusting that and working with the school to improve the driveway will make a huge difference. The driveway can currently only handle one right turn vehicle entering and one exiting. The improvements will let two in at once and still be able to get one vehicle out. So there is an acknowledgement that the driveway is tight. According to our measurements, you can actually get 3 lanes in there, and that's what we're going to try to clarify. Dennis McCarthy says, when is the demonstration now planned? Our current thinking is at the end of June, but that's really going to be dependent upon our permitting and our and the lockdown. So we will know by the next time that we have another Q&A session like this, we will know when the demonstration will be held. Okay, another question here, Jeffrey Weinstein. Poor people, people with disabilities, seniors, and students often use public transportation. How does the lane reduction take into consideration those that rely on public transportation? Actually, the lane reduction still allows for the trolleys to get curbside, to get out of travel lane and get back in travel lane to accommodate for public transportation. Another question here from Jeffrey Weinstein. How will a single lane in each direction accommodate the large number of commuters who rely on roads to get to work? How will a single lane accommodate large trucks and horse trailers, trailer homes, and emergency vehicles? The lane width is sufficient to accommodate large trucks, horse trailers, trailer homes, and emergency vehicles. And the single lane, as it is right now, your current traffic volumes don't warrant a 4-lane road. For a street that has 7,000 to 9,000 cars a day, 4 lanes is really overkill. And as I said before, you don't have this condition anywhere else around town or within the vicinity where you have a 4-lane stretch of road. So even if in an alternate universe, and I think you'll find this once the demonstration is in effect, any delays are going to be limited to 30 seconds, a minute. There will be some slight change in your traffic patterns, but it's not going to be anything that warrants sort of a change in commuting patterns in any meaningful way. Jeffrey Weinstein, okay. In 2019, a lane of Maricopa Highway was shut down due to an accident, and another time due to an emergency in the Ojai Preserve. With only 1 lane, the entire Maricopa Highway will be blocked due to an emergency. How can you justify 4 lanes for bicycles and 2 lanes for vehicles when just a small segment of the population bikes? Well, I think that that's a good question. The project is as much about returning the transportation network to what it should be, to right-sizing it, as much as it is for bicycle access. So, the fact that there are 4 lanes here for just 4,000 feet out of a network of hundreds of miles is an anomaly itself. And I think the net benefits of slowing traffic and providing for a balance of alternate modes is a net benefit to the community. Okay, I'm jumping. There's a couple of different chats and question and answer here. Kenley Newfield says, are there even any 4-lane roads in Ojai? I can't think of one. I can't either. Our Public Works Director, Greg Grant, speak to that. Greg, are there any 4-lane roads in Ojai?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I think most of the residents of the valley would know and understand that the only other 4-lane segment would be through Oakview, and the county is just undertaking a major study considering a lane reduction for that section as well. It's much higher volume. It's up in the 25,000 cars per day range, and it's a similar length, and they have a similar problem. People use that 4-lane section to pass cars and get back in the lineup and go to regular speed. So it's really considered a dangerous situation, and that's recognized by the county that secured this grant to study consideration to do a lane reduction there as well. But I do want to mention it's not really comparable because their volumes are so much higher.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back over here. Anonymous attendee says, it sounds like your organization has already made up its mind about lane reduction based on its project history. What lessons from previous projects can you apply to Maricopa Highway? I wish you weren't anonymous, and I hope you reach out to me via email. You should know that I don't take anything for granted, and I haven't made my mind up about anything. And I go into these projects, as I said, with a completely open mind. I have a predilection for bicycle infrastructure, certainly, but I sincerely want to see what the test results are. I know from my previous experience that a street with this volume of traffic is not going to see an impact. And I can tell you an anecdote about a project that we were involved with in Akron, Ohio. And it was not dissimilar from this in many respects, and actually had a volume of 20,000 cars a day. And it was our test was in partnership with the city and with the University of Akron. It was in front of the University of Akron. And the city had a federal grant of, I think about $4 million, $5 million to take that 4-lane road. It was a 4-lane road with a center turn lane down to 2 lanes with a center turn lane. And that's right on the cusp of the volumes that you would want to see with a 4-lane reduction. Once you get over 25,000 cars a day, you really don't want to reduce down to a 4-lane road. That's the rule of thumb. But 20,000 is okay. One of the challenges for that project was that, in that project we took one of the lanes, a full lane, and made a 2-way bicycle facility. So we did not touch the rest of the street at all. So it still had 2-lane capacity in one direction and 1 lane in the other. And that was supposed to be a 6-month test. It was implemented in the summer, and it was implemented in August, and school for the University of Akron started in late August, early September. And that was a situation where the intersections, it was similar in that there were numerous small intersections, but each of those intersections had a traffic light. And the delays, the city found that the delays were 30 seconds up to a minute at some of the intersections, but they didn't change the signal timing on the lights, so traffic did back up. And they faced a backlash, and they removed the project immediately after, gosh, it was like a month and a half. They were supposed to do it for 6 months. And so I say that anecdote just so that you understand, we've had experiences where the test did not go well. There should be lessons learned. And that lesson learned for the city was, geez, you know what? We need to do signal changes to make traffic go smoother. And as it turns out, that's really all they needed. That's what the traffic study said they needed to do. And so we do go into this with a completely open mind, and hope that if you have your reservations about the project, that you talk to us and engage with us, and recognize that we're sincere in that feeling. Okay, another question here. D, seems like the demo is mostly measuring bike, car, and pedestrian traffic. Is it also looking at trouble spots at intersections, such as how someone in a wheelchair at the Vaughn's intersection has to wheel over to the traffic light button to indicate which to cross, then wheel back to the curb ramp to actually cross the highways? Same for bike walk over to the button, get on bike and back up to the curb ramp. Will you be looking at how people utilize this and how it might be improved for safety and efficacy? That's a really good question. I don't know the Vaughn's intersection, but I think that when we do these projects, we're looking at general usage throughout. And one of the reasons that we have the CAC and why we do an intense public process is our hope. We're not from Ojai, right? I mean, I'm talking to you from Miami, Florida. It's, whatever it is, 9 o'clock right now. And we don't live there. We will lean on you all to really be our observers, and this test is for you as much as it is for the city. So if you see something that's not working, you need to let everybody know, hey guys, if this is a problem. We have an issue here getting to push the buttons if you're a person who's in a wheelchair or otherwise. So I know that's kind of a non-answer to your question, because we hadn't really anticipated that specific case, but where there are cases that we're not being super clear about or not obvious about, let us know. We want to hear about it and we want to think about those issues. So especially as it relates to any sort of accessibility issues in general.
I think I will add though, so Vivon's is at Carrillo, the intersection of Carrillo. You know, the sensors that we are looking to or planning to install, they can capture different types of movements. And so at a baseline, kind of the baseline of what they do are, you know, counts and that sort of thing. But we can also, you know, work with them to potentially capture some other sorts of data in terms of how people are moving across the intersections, et cetera. I don't think Carrillo was one of the intersections that we were planning to put the sensors on, just because we have limited, you know, we're still working out kind of the power capabilities, et cetera. But at the other intersections, we can definitely consider that, or kind of widening the evaluation.
Yeah. A couple more questions here and we're almost wrapping up. Kenley Newfield says, has there been a discussion of speed limit? I assume it would drop to 25 miles an hour. Greg, has there been a discussion about reducing the speed limit?
The speed limit right now is 35 and it'll stay at 35. There's no plan to reduce it. There is an issue with people using the double lane situation and they speed excessively beyond the 35. And this is considered to generally be able to help control that, to help reduce the amount of speeders on that segment, but it would stay at 35.
Okay, thank you. Kenley also asks, he comments, people don't ride bikes because it's not safe on the road. I think that's in response to another question here. Dr. Herb says, does the previous question about large vehicles answer wide load D8 plus earth movers or backhoes used for fire mitigation? I think that any of the wide load vehicles are going to be accommodated with the lane width that Caltrans is approving, as it is going to be their standard. We will verify all of the questions that you're asking about the vehicle types in our FAQ, just to be 100% certain, but my gut is that yes, that those will be accommodated.
And just to pipe in on that, is that, yeah, wide loads are, the maximum wide loads can go up to 14 foot, and they can take certain routes where they do extreme loads if the roads can accommodate it. So the limitations is not the Maricopa Highway. The limitation is where you're coming and going to this little segment, this segment of 4-lane we have right here. So it's not like people are loading up extra large loads on this road and take them to the other end of this 4-lane. They have to come and go from somewhere else, and those where there'll be limitations on this project, on the widths that can be carried on this roadway.
I'd like to also add, we've seen a bunch of hands go up, and I'm trying to get through the questions. If you still want to talk, after I go through all the questions, then raise your hand again so that we can get to you. I apologize. I'm trying to be efficient here with our answering, and you're asking a lot of really great questions. So anonymous attendee asks, Caltrans required an emergency evacuation plan prior to any lane reduction. Has the city of Ojai prepared such a plan as part of the permitting process?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
And yes, there was an initial traffic study done based on some concerns after the fire. There was a supplemental traffic study done to consider the impacts of the project on the emergency evacuations. So based on that, the parking was going to be between the trees that are proposed in the buffer lane between the bike and the travel lane. Were going to be less than 30 feet, but it was considered, that was a major concern that was addressed or brought up by fire. And those are now 40 foot between the planters for each tree, and that'll allow the trees, that'll allow the vehicles to drive and park between the trees or drive into the bike lane and use that as a bypass or a detour lane. But it was not the intent of this project to address an emergency evacuation plan for the entire valley.
Okay, thanks, Greg. With a single, this is from an anonymous attendee. With a single lane, Maricopa Highway will be unprepared to accommodate evacuation and obstruct access to Nordhoff High School. In December 2017, we experienced the Thomas Fire north of El Roblar, Koyama Road. How will a single lane accommodate the large number of evacuees from a firestorm? What lessons have you learned from the campfire in Paradise, California?
I think I might be able to best address that as well,
Sure.
as this was brought up a few times after the fire. And that's really what, when we did the supplemental study, was the major issues brought up and addressed in that supplemental traffic study. And that, by the way, was reviewed by Caltrans, the fire and police departments, and everybody approved of that plan and the approach. And essentially, I think there's some, I was there the night of the fire when the Nordhoff High School was designated as an evacuation area, and cars streamed in periodically. They didn't come all at once. People evacuated their homes at various times. And I think, as we all know, the primary evacuation route from the Ojai Valley was on Route 150 to Carpinteria, and that was a traffic jam the entire route. It took about 2 to 3 hours to travel that typical 40-minute drive. And so the obstruction is not 4 lanes that we're talking about a lane reduction on. It's the in all directions from there for tens of miles, the 2 lanes, that's what the restrictions are.
And I'll add to that, Greg, that at least for this section of Maricopa Highway, we still have the bike lane that can serve for emergency access where necessary, and it's still going to face the same bottleneck at either end of the street. So
good point. So that was brought up as well. Yeah, that essentially there is 2 lanes being kept in both directions. Yeah, that's an important point, Tony. Thank you. That the existing proposed 1 lane, but also that bike lane can be used as a secondary lane if necessary. But really, it was just highlighted that the restriction up the road is really where the issues are.
Okay, a couple more here on the chat. From Dennis McCarthy, says, why is it relevant that there are any other 4-lane roads? I'm not sure it is relevant, other than to say, you know, it's been brought up that that the transportation network is 1 lane in any direction for 50 miles. There was another question or comment earlier. The fact that it's only 4 lanes in this section, and that we're going back down to 2 lanes, is not going to make any bit of an impact, since the rest of your network is not 4 lanes. So if you had an entire network of 100 miles of 4-lane roads, then bottlenecking this down to 2 lanes would make something of a difference if you had traffic volumes to warrant 4 lanes everywhere, but you don't. So that's why that conversation is relevant, other than just bringing up why 4 lanes. Russell says, Maricopa has the only real stretch outside of Oakview. Oh, this is about the 4 lanes again. Maricopa has the only real stretch of 4 lanes outside of Oakview. The rest are at signals to get more people through a signal. They are called stacking lanes to improve the signal effectiveness. Caltrans is doing an ADA review of the highways, and that may address wheelchairs. Thank you, Russell. Okay, Souza Francina says, reminder that these 4 lanes are in front of a high school and the Ojai Meadows Preserve, a park. It's also an extension of the Ojai Bike Trail. That is part of the valley-wide safe routes to school family-friendly bike network. I think that's, if I'm interpreting that comment correctly, is a justification for the bike lanes in this particular stretch. Kenley says, she's talking about Carrillo, Maricopa. I think that intersection is where the death occurred. Oh, okay, I think we addressed that. Thank you, Kenley. Russell says, plus the project will provide a shorter crossing and probably have a central safety island with a second signal request button, which will all help any such challenges. Kenley says, yes, I agree, Russell, but the demo project probably won't have another button mid-road. I guess you all are seeing the same chat. Okay, let me go to a question here. Russell says, Souza, will the demonstration project include a sidewalk in front of the Ben Franklin Shopping Center next to Vaughn's? Students walking to the school, parents with children are often forced to use the parking lot to get through that section of the highway. I've seen mothers with a stroller and young children struggle to safely get through that area without being hit by cars. No, we will not be including a sidewalk. Everything that we do is working within the existing pavement markings as much as possible. So we are going to reduce the amount of invasive removal that we have to do of the existing pavement markings, and we will not be doing any sort of curb reconstruction or concrete work at all. And so that falls outside of the scope of what it is that we are doing with this project and with quick build projects at this scale anyway.
Tony, if I can add to that, just to clarify, the final design does include sidewalk infills for problem areas like that where there are no sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
But it can't be demonstrated easily, so yeah, that's not something we're handling.
Okay, so that's the end of the chat and the question and answer. If anybody wants to speak and say something, we'll open it up to folks if they want to raise their hands. I'm sure that a lot of you that did raise your hands previously asked your questions and we answered them. And like I said, we will have our Q&A sessions over the next few days. And really, we want to be as available to you all as possible, or to anyone else who is not present right now and who couldn't join us. Please let folks know that we are available. You can email us anytime. We can schedule a conversation. We want to talk to folks who are interested in this project and who are invested in the community. So it's important for us to talk to you. Okay. Greg, did you want to say anything before we head out?
No, I don't think so. It seems like there might have been a question there about red lights at the crossings that I didn't quite understand how to unmic. I'd get my mic going there, but
Okay.
and I think that was Dennis McCarthy, and I just wanted to mention that, yeah, there's never been a consideration in the concept design or otherwise for red lights at the existing pedestrian crosswalks on Maricopa. There is a plan for, the acronym is RRFB, and it's rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So we have those installed recently over the past year at each crossing, and there'll be additional pedestrian crossing enhancements at each one of those, but there's no intention to add red lights or any kind of stop lights at those. And then I think also, there's some talk about, yeah, the critical intersection is certainly on Maricopa at Church Street, entering the high school. And we're actively working with a high school for an optimal plan to best access the high school. So there's a few different options on that, which involve modifying the entrance and or even possibly adding another driveway cut, and possibly even modifying over at the Pyree Road entrance as well. And so that's going to take some time to work through that with the school and get that as part of the plan, possibly part of the demonstration, but it won't, if there's concrete changes, it's unlikely we would rip curbs or modify it in that way as part of the demonstration. I think that was it for me.
Okay. Okay, there's one final comment here from Kenley. I know everybody can see it. That turn lane into the high school may back up into a single lane of traffic in the morning. That may be, and we'll look at it next time we're able to go out. We saw the drop off in the afternoon patterns, so we are aware of what that looks like. And so we do have to see the morning drop off situation, and we'll definitely, well, we're not going to be able to actually during
to address that, I mean, we're very aware. I believe Kenley's referring to the northbound lane on Maricopa where it turns left into the high school. So we realize that's
right,
the critical point of that intersection, and that's what our focus is with the high school, to assure we address that. So I appreciate bringing that up, but that is absolutely our main focus of that intersection. I think if anything any of us could dream of possibly going wrong out there, it would be that left-hand turn with a timid driver. We're assuring that they have a nice positive way to get into that driveway, and once they get into the parking lot, that they have somewhere to go so it doesn't back up at the entry. So that's a key part of the design effort.
We'll go over that, Kenley, when we do our next workshop, or if you want to have a follow-up or during the CAC meetings, we can go and look at the actual design of that intersection so that you could see what we're proposing for the demonstration project, and then we can talk about what's proposed for the permanent version as well. I'm sure that's a comment that other people
have. Let me tap on that again too, is that that's the great part of this 6-month demonstration, and that's part of why the council has requested, there's a way we could push this back a bit with the COVID-19 issues. We're not able the demonstration would have been somewhat wasted without the school being in session. So we're pushing it back to the June, July territory to get it installed before school presumably gets back in session in August. And then we'll have a full 6-month period so we can check this thing out all the way through the football season and check it out. It would have been ideal to check it out July 4th. I hope that happens, that we'll have our July 4th gathering. It's unknown at this point. And we may actually have the demonstration installed for that as well. That's probably one other peak time we can think of.
Okay. Oh, we got a couple more questions here. Well, Russ says that is not an issue. The simple solution is not to use obstructions for the parking on the stretch between Pirate and Church. That would let people get past backups. That's true as well. And then we have a couple of anonymous attendees. How many times have you visited Ojai actually driving and experienced Maricopa Highway, the primary entrance into Los Padres National Forest? Only a couple of times. So I hope that those are a couple of the first times of many. And so, you know, I'm not sure that that's relevant to this project if, you know, we've got this wonderful group of folks who have been in this workshop and city staff and all the technical committee who are local and have those eyes and ears on the ground and can help us really flesh out this project. So our empirical observations have been limited to a couple of trips, but certainly there will be more to come.
And let me touch that one, Tony, too. It's important to recognize that street plans, which Tony and Dana are on this Zoom conference call with us, their intention is not to design this. They are demonstrating the project that's being designed for an extended period of time, right? That concept plan has been underway for years with the design effort for years. So that they're demonstrating the concept and the design effort underway right now. They're not actually defining these elements that you're questioning if they know enough about.
Couple more questions. The current plan shows 3 medians dividing Maricopa Highway. Did you know the fire chief in Paradise, California specifically recommended against 3 medians dividing traffic flow? I did not know that, but we're not impacting the medians. That's not envisioned by our demonstration or by the permanent version of the project. And as we've said, in terms of evacuation, the bike lane is wide enough with the buffer to accommodate for any evacuation overflow if necessary. Another anonymous attendee, the width of Maricopa Highway is sufficient for 2 vehicle lanes plus a bike lane in each direction. Why is it necessary to have a class 4 bike lane separated by cars and trees? Why aren't you considering a simple green painted bike lane with stripe separation? That's a really good question. I think there are a couple of answers to that. Number one is the bike lane serves the Ojai Valley Trail, it serves the preserve and also the high school, where even in the short time that I was there on site, I saw many kids riding their bikes to and from the high school. So, and when it comes to a street with the volume of cars that you have, as low as it is, you still want to have a separated facility that's physically separated somehow from automotive traffic. Simply painting it green does not confer on the bike lane any sense of security at all. And having delineators and parked cars and trees will have the effect of slowing traffic and providing the security and safety for people using the bike lane. So I think you are correct in that there is enough width to still accommodate 2 lanes, but for the sake of having a protected bike lane, a lot of that space is being given over to the protected bike lane. Okay, well, thank you all so much. I mean, these have been really great and challenging questions, but thoughtful, and it shows that there's a lot of interest and energy that has been spent on behalf of the residents of Ojai on this project. Whether you support the project or not, I think hearing from you all and listening to these comments has been really helpful to us, and we're going to want to continue to hear from you all. And you see our email addresses there. Again, please reach out to us if you have additional comments or questions or want to talk to us more. And we will have our follow-up Q&A sessions over the next 3 days. Tomorrow's Thursday and Friday and Monday again. And then we will regroup with our CAC and the follow-up workshops. So just keep in touch with us. We're our next workshop, we'll be talking about materials that we'll be using, and dial into specific design interventions in front of the high school, at the turning, at that intersection of Church and Pyrie, and then also in front of the hospital. So thank you, everybody, and have a great night, and stay safe during this time. And I can't wait to meet you all in person, and you know, have a great implementation of this project, and hopefully we'll be able to celebrate during the kickoff event in June, and if it's in July, but we'll see each other soon, hopefully. So
Thank you, everybody.
Tony, Dana, appreciate everybody for attending.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.